I have come across a few experiences where people who were around me wanted to understand what I was going through more. Not just because they were curious, but they wanted to be able to support me, or they knew others that they were going through, so they could share my experience, or they could support them going through some sort of terminal illness or cancer. So there's a few questions that came about, and I thought it would be nice for me to run through them. And I know there's going to be a lot of things that I'm gonna to forget to say or didn't say, and all that kind of stuff. But if I can get some of the things that are initially in my mind, I hope that it may help others in future. So the first question was, when I was diagnosed with cancer, or when I was admitted to hospital and I was on death's bed, what kept me positive going through all of it? As you could probably imagine, being an adult who has a young family, my family was first and foremost the reason to fight, and then secondly, their friends and my extended family, and all those who support me now and who have in the past, and everybody who I affect in my circle generally. But I had a lot of reason to fight. Generally, people were pretty good to me, and I hope I was good to others. But that was the obvious reason to fight. The second reason to fight for, I guess, my existence and my livelihood was I just simply wanted to see and do more. I didn't know what that meant, and I kind of still don't, but I just know that I wanted to do and see more in life. And as simple as it is, that's what it was. Another thing that happened to me as I was going through it and finding ways to be positive was that I just had simply more purpose in life. So pre being diagnosed or pre being sick, I was going through the rat race and grinding through life, doing the ordinary things which felt like I was going to live forever. But as soon as I got sick, I felt that my existence was going to be short-handed, and everything I was doing suddenly had a lot more purpose, especially for my family and friends. The next question I had was, what are the things I can't prepare for? So the first thing I can say that no one really says in other mediums out there is that you go through this process of a lot of deep thinking. Not only do you think of things at a surface level, but you start deep diving into this spiral of why are things happening this way, and then you start questioning yourself, why am I thinking this way, why aren't I thinking the other way? And it goes back and forth, so you can turn the most positive things into something so negative, but on the hindsight of that, you can also turn things that are quite negative into the positive. So I'm not sure if it's like a process of going through depression or realizing what's at hand, but it's definitely quite an interesting process, and at the start it's really crazy, but as you go on, Like me, I'm probably 6, 7 months into this whole cancer thing, and it doesn't really go away, but you do get better at managing the thought process of it all. I have tried to speak to others about it, and some people understand, some people don't, but I don't let it get to me. Other things you can't really plan for your previous plans in life. So your career, in my experience, my career was held to a stop, or quite possibly forgotten. I haven't worked for the last 6 months. I'm at a point where I'm possibly thinking about going back to work, but I have no idea what that looks like and whether I'm actually capable. Some days I feel that I am, and some days I just know that it will just be too chaotic, and if I go through the stress, it will probably send my health going backwards. So it's situational, and I'm in the process of trying to experiment and seeing what that might bring. So another thing you can't really prepare for is what happens with your career, because that just might go out the window. And any holidays, I have had to cancel, I think, 3 holidays because of it. I wasn't going to do anything extravagant, but things like camping, things like a local cruise. I was potentially going to Bali. That's where I originally found out I had cancer. I was planning to go to Bali, and on the week before going, I felt really sick, and that's when I was diagnosed. Another thing that comes into reality when you have been diagnosed, or if you're terminally ill, is that your bucket list changes quite dramatically. So things you thought you could do and things you could do to push your life limits is not going to happen anymore, and it's quite depressing. But it's something you can't change. So you just have to set your expectations and find ways to keep yourself positive in life, knowing that you may not ever be able to do what you wanted, but there's other things to do that can still bring those enjoyments to life. What you can prepare for, I guess, is knowing that, or you can acknowledge that you are sick, or you have been diagnosed with something, and it's going to take time to recover. So you know that, and you can plan for that, and acknowledge that you are sick, and don't expect others to understand. Prepare for yourself to fight this lonely battle, because I can tell you it is quite lonely. As much as you may want to express or get your hand held through the process, no one really understands, and it's quite an eye-opener. So what can you prepare for after being diagnosed or finding out you're terminally ill? First thing you can do is start getting your life affairs and your financial affairs in order. So your will, your power of attorney, any insurances you might have, and all that kind of stuff. With me, I put myself in a not so great position, but with people who have planned ahead it becomes more enjoyable. But if you haven't, like me, it's quite erratic or chaotic, I should say, and it's will send you into a it will send you into a place that you don't want to be. But you can go through it. I can tell you from my experience, those around me, especially my partner, she understood, or well, she did her best to understand. Don't get me wrong, it's quite depressing to know that you could have done better, but you didn't. But once everyone acknowledges that things are what they are going to be, and the only thing you can do is deal with what you have and proceed forward, then it does get better. The other thing you can prepare for is realizing that people are going to start identifying you as the person with cancer or the person with a terminal illness, and they will tiptoe around you because they don't want to hurt your feelings. And as you can imagine, that's expected. You'll probably be doing the same thing for others who may be going through a hard time around you. My advice in this area is to initiate breaking the ice. So if you're the first person to joke around about your sickness, if you're the first person to acknowledge that, you know, shit's happened, then people will generally open up to you, be more present when listening, because, you know, I mean, when things get tough, people generally tend to shut out things, and not listen to what's happening around them. And look, that's totally okay. The sooner you realize it's okay, the easier it becomes on you. The other question that comes across quite frequently is, you know, when are things good and when are things bad, and, you know, what does my mind go through when all this is happening. So in my experience, the toughest things that happened to me was realizing that I hadn't done enough to set my family up, and feeling like the biggest failure. A lot of people told me it's okay, they understand, there's nothing to worry about and all that kind of stuff. But as the person that's going through it, you start really thinking about what you've achieved in life and what you haven't, and the expectations that you had and what you've actually fulfilled tends to be quite separated. But after thinking and after experiencing all that I have, it comes down to, it is what it is. So you start to realize that this is now my new benchmark, and I don't know how much time I have left. I could either make something of myself from now until then, or I can dwell on what I haven't done and go nowhere. Once going through all this, another hard journey was realizing that there was a lot of simple things in life that I just hadn't experienced or hadn't achieved. So I'm a young parent, I will say, not by my age, but in terms of my children's age. I hadn't flown a kite with them, I haven't taken them camping, I haven't taken them to the zoo, and realizing this was quite hard. So I've actually created a bucket list, not in terms of the extremes, but in terms of the basics. And I found that going through this and then checking them off is quite rewarding. Also quite depressing because it might be your last time, but generally it's really rewarding. I found that just going to the park now compared to what I did before is drastically different. Before it was a process, it was a common thing, but now, I'm at the park and I see a smile or I hear a laugh, and it's the best thing that's ever happened. And I'm really grateful and thankful for it. In terms of your health, in my experience, I went through a lot of ups and downs. So some of the ups is absolutely amazing, as I just talked about previously. And sometimes you just forget that you're sick. And then there's days where you forget you're sick, and then you go to chase your boy or your girl, and then you realize you're actually sick. So I'm 6 months down the line since I've been diagnosed. I feel a lot better, but I still can't jog or run. So that eliminates a lot of my activities. But because I've been diagnosed, I'm a lot more alert to my surroundings. So what can your friends and family do to support? The first thing is listen. Listen without having to fix things. So with me, sometimes I just like venting, speaking about things, exploring what's happening in my mind. And when I'm doing it alone, it's quite chaotic. So it's quite nice to have somebody around me who's listening and just exploring my thoughts with me, right or wrong. On the contrary, or on the opposite side of things, I do enjoy, or I do appreciate when people just talk or fill the silence. There's a lot of times where I'm drowning in my own thoughts that are somewhat negative, and just being distracted by chatter or laughter. Laughter is really good. And just going through things at a normal pace in normal life is really appreciated, because some of the things that go through my head is quite dark, and I'm generally not a dark person. I'm a deep thinker, but not generally a dark person. So just having people to fill the space is quite nice. Another tip or another suggestion I can give friends and family is treat the person who's going through everything with empathy, and just try not to identify them with their cancer or their sickness. There's been many outings, and there's been so many times, I bless them, when people just don't know what to say. And it just falls back to stay strong, stay motivational. I'm here for you if you need me. And it's understandable because people just don't know what to talk about, which is fine. For someone who's like me, who's experienced and had a few of these conversations. But someone who's going through it and deep down into it, it's quite difficult, because there's no, I guess, value to the person who's hearing it, because no one is strong when someone says be strong. You know what I mean? If someone's crying and you say stop crying, they're not gonna stop crying. So just think about these type of situations and just be mindful. If you are helping somebody who's quite new or at the early stages of their diagnosis of their sickness or illness, helping them with their life or financial affairs is a really good thing. Don't do things like, don't say things like, oh, what do you need me to do? And I'll do it. Actually put in some thought and think about that, what they might need to do. So simple things like, your lawn is growing, and when do you want me to come around to cut it? Rather than, what do you want me to do about your lawn? Because nobody wants the pressure of realizing that they can't do things or they're going through things. And having somebody who has actually thought about it and actually just initiating that process really is quite valuable, and it takes a lot of load off the person's thought. That's a lot of blabbering about what's just on my mind, and I did a bit of reading and stuff like that just to not derail myself. But I hope that helps. I hope it's not too much mumbo jumbo, and I'm sure I've missed a whole load, and I will expand on this in the future. So yeah, if you're going through it, good luck with it. I hope it goes well. And for me, I'm doing all these videos because I'm just trying to stay me. If I'm not me, I'm still going to be almost still me.